Welcome to the First Team College Football Recruiting Show with former NFL QB Matt Simms, Irish Breakdown recruiting analyst Ryan Roberts, and former college long snapper Joe DeLeone.
I am Joe DeLeone, joined by recruiting analyst Ryan Roberts and former NFL quarterback Matthew Simms, as well as the founder of Simms Complete QB. Good thing that we've got Matt here for the show for the entire season, especially for this first episode, because we're talking quarterbacks for the 2023 high school recruiting class. Guys, this high school class of quarterbacks that we've got for 2023 might just be one of the most talented that we've seen in a while. Kind of on par with that grouping that we had with Justin Fields and Trevor Lawrence a few years ago. This group is already stacking up to be four big name players, and outside of those four, some stars that are showing up behind them as well. We're going to break down four guys on today's episode, those four being Arch Manning, Dante Moore, Nico Iamaleava, and Malachi Nelson. But guys, this class is so talented with all the names that are past these four guys. Ryan, going to you first. What do you think of this group as a whole?
Well, I mean, I'm just really first and foremost, I'm excited to break it down with Matt, obviously, as the former quarterback here. But it's just kind of evaluating all these players, Joe. I mean, like you said, it's not just this big four, right? Like this is a incredibly deep quarterback class in the 2023 cycle. And we have seen, obviously, a big demand for that position just historically, but especially this year. Like we've seen some of the bigger programs really take their swings at a lot of these guys. And I really think that when you're talking about a depth of a class as well as the star talent, 2023 is as good as that we've seen in a few years. You talked about the Trevor Lawrence, Justin Fields year, may not have the two up top like that class had, but it probably has more depth. There is a lot of really good quarterbacks in this year's group.
Matt, how about you? What are your thoughts on this quarterback class, especially from these four guys that we watched overall?
Yeah, these are four names that obviously everyone across the country has heard multiple times. Now with social media being just that much more out in front, you get a really good feel for these guys at a younger age. And the cool thing is I'm watching the film and kind of going over the things that they do well, which is a lot. They do a lot of really good things well for young quarterbacks. Is they have great fits with the schools that they're going to. And I think that's really an exciting thing for the teams, obviously, and also for the players. I think a lot of the players found homes that are really conducive to them being successful at the next level. And then ultimately, the main goal of making it to the NFL one day.
Matt, it's a great note because if you ask me of the committed quarterbacks, what fit do I not really like? I really can't point to too many, man. Like all these fits make a ton of sense. And the other cool thing is that we've kind of started to see some of the premier programs in college football kind of take a rise back, like USC, Texas. They've been down in recent years, but now it's Steve Sarkisian's in Texas. Now that Lincoln Riley's over at USC, of course, Malachi Nelson committed to USC right now. And we have Arch Manning committed to Texas, just of this group that we're breaking down today. We're starting to see some of those blue blood programs start to get some of these quarterbacks back. We're not just seeing the guys go to Alabama and Georgias of the world. They're starting to kind of spread out a little bit, which I think makes this class really fun this year.
Yeah, because I feel like in the past few years, it's really just been, if you go to Ohio State, that's like your fastest way to going to the NFL, right? Whoever plays for Ohio State, you're going to get an opportunity to play at the league no matter what, just because of the depth of the talent that they have. But I think with this crew, you see there's just like a great combination of coach and quarterback that I really love. And, I guess really the most like unproven of the group so far would just be, Oregon and Dan Lanning and Kenny Dillingham. They just haven't quite done it maybe to the extent as, like a Steve Sarkisian has, as a Lincoln Riley has in that same playing field. But nonetheless, I do think like Dante Moore in that case with Oregon fits extremely well with that offense and the scheme and what they're trying to build in a great program over there.
So one thing before we dive into our first guy, Arch Manning, man, I know you can definitely speak on this. I think some people don't really understand the differences between a 5-star and say a 4-star or a 3-star. Like what are some of the, even if it's minute, even if it's so small, like what are some of those differences between a 5-star quarterback and then maybe a guy that's in the middle of the class at the quarterback position?
Yeah, that's something that's very difficult to say and or to decipher really. A lot of those things are kind of just like beauty is in the eye of the beholder, right? And with Arch Manning, it's one of these things where, listen, he's 6'4", he's 215. He has like the body and build of a quarterback that, like is prototypical. He does look like a young Peyton and Eli back there when I watch him playing for Newman High School. And, at the fact that he is still only a senior in high school, he's going to continue to grow into that frame. And with Arch, I would say that on this list of 4 quarterbacks, maybe not like physically the most gifted thrower and playmaker out of the 4, but you can't deny the fact that he's, in an environment where quarterback is like the lifestyle. And, coming from my background too, as well, like me being the son of a great quarterback and the brother of another great quarterback, it's really hard, not to absorb some of those lessons just by being like a fly on the wall there. And, also the great thing too for Arch that's like super impressive that everyone will overlook is that it seems like he has a very high character. And he's done things the right way. He's represented himself and his family the right way. So those are other things that, the intangibles that everyone always talks about that kind of give him an advantage over some others that are going into this new territory.
It's a great point, Joe, because on the Believe in NFL Draft Prospect podcast, we talk a lot about quarterback evaluations and how it can get so muddled at times because it's not just about the physical traits, right? It's the mental acumen, kind of what Matt's talking about, right? He grew up in a football household. Arch Manning also, the son of Cooper, with 2 uncles that are going to be both Hall of Fame quarterbacks down the road, right? Like being around that type of high-level football and that type of mental processing is made him an advanced player in that regard, right? So we're going to kind of talk about the traits that each one of these have. But to your original question, Joe, that you posed to Matt, what's the difference between a 5-star, 4-star, et cetera? Not a lot usually. It's just what is the floor versus ceiling conversation, right? Like that's usually where it comes in. 5 stars usually have both. 4 stars maybe have the high ceiling, but maybe the floor is a little bit lower. Like that's kind of like the boomer bust thing, right? And I think that that's a interesting conversation we're going to talk about is where are the guys even in these 4 that we selected today, where are they kind of in the hierarchy of these top 4? Because I think that's where you kind of decipher what the ceiling is versus what the floor is at the next level.
And I think that's why I didn't really actually answer the question because I'm not a huge fan of the stars and all those rankings because at the end of the day, you could be a great football player. And if you're in a bad environment, that doesn't allow you to grow as an individual, as a leader, as a football player, you're not going to be successful. And we see that at the highest levels here in the NFL. You could be a great football player. You can still play poorly at a high level because of the environment that's surrounding you.
And I find that really interesting, though, that I feel like a lot of quarterbacks have that same approach. Like those that are on the outside watching recruits and evaluating them. Of course, journalists are going to favor the star rating or fans are going to favor the star rating because they want to be able to say, hey, I've got this 5-star kid. We've got this 5-star kid in our class, and it's exciting. It's fun. But to your point, like quarterbacks, like you don't really care what the star rating is. It's like how well do you slot in? How well can you fit in with the system? And what's that support system around you? More than even it is at the NFL level that you need these high school kids to step into a situation where they can develop and they can succeed.
And at the end of the day, stars, really, what does it mean? It just means, hey, the more stars that you have, the more opportunities that you have, right? And that's just goes like to the guys that get drafted in the first round in the NFL compared to the 7th round of the free agent. The free agent, hey, I'm sorry, you better perform really quickly or else you're out the door. First rounder, you can struggle and teams are going to fight through those struggles with you because they believe you to be that first rounder. So stars are power in a sense too, as far as forgiveness and maybe a longer leash life too at the position.
And I think that's why we kicked off this early conversation with the fit aspect, right, Joe? I mean, it matters where these guys are going to end up going and where they're developed properly from a coaching perspective, from an atmosphere, from an offensive schematic perspective. Like all these things really matter. And to your point, it's about kind of honing in and accentuating the strengths that each one of these quarterbacks have. Because, for every Trevor Lawrence there is a 3-star Andrew Luck out of the state of New Mexico, right? Like it happens. Like talent is everywhere. And that's another fascinating thing is that usually the stars come from the similar programs. You know, you're always going to see the guys coming from St. John Bosco and IMG Academy and those types of schools, and for good reason, right? They're a very successful program, so obviously they have great football players. But not every level is the same, obviously, across the country. And there's going to be some guys that are the big fish in a small pond or vice versa. And so it's obviously a very important thing for college coaches to evaluate appropriately to see where the talent comes from, because it's not always from those big name schools. There's guys that talent does come from everywhere. So I think that's another important thing, is why it's so hard to really to label some of these kids sometimes, because they don't all come from the same places. They don't all come from the same backgrounds. Everyone is unique in that own way, which makes the rating system flawed and interesting at times to evaluate.
Right. It makes it fun and entertaining for guys like us to talk about it. I mean, let's just keep it real that way. And, the great thing is, hey, 70% of the NFL really is 2 or 3 stars. The majority of them are guys that were maybe overlooked, and the thing we have to keep in mind too is that when you're being recruited at this time of your life, you're a 16, 17, 18-year-old young man. And, those next few years of your development are huge. And also the aspect too, that luck is a big factor going forward as well. Staying healthy, being on the field. I mean, I went to college and, my coach left like 5 days into it. I went to Tennessee with Lane Kiffin and I was there for 5 days and he was out, and I'm like, all right, hey, good luck, Lane. See you later, man. So it's really interesting, just how these things play out. But these are 4 like fantastic football players that I really enjoyed watching and prepping for.
So that first guy that we're going to open up with, and he has arguably been the most talked about guy in the group, maybe even the most talked about quarterback high school recruit that we've had in a very long time, particularly because of the name that is behind him. We're talking about Arch Manning, who is the committed Texas quarterback, the number 1 quarterback per 247 Sports in the 2023 class, coming from Isidore Newman in New Orleans, Louisiana. 6'4", 215 pounds. Guys, when I watched him and I took a look at him, it highlights some of the things that we've already discussed with him. He is around football 24/7. He gets a free pass to the Manning Passing Academy every single year. He doesn't have to pay, or at least I would.
He is the Manning Passing Academy.
Exactly. So this guy, man, you watch him play. I think we could sit here and point out the different athletic traits that the guys below him have better than Manning does, but the processing ability, the acumen, the understanding of the game, the instincts, it's very similar to what we had with Eli and Peyton. And we're already starting to see shades of that for a guy who's only a senior in high school.
It's really weird, Joe, watching Arch Manning, because there's 2 sides to this coin for me right now as far as what the perception is. One is he's the greatest quarterback that ever lived, right? And then the other side is that he's incredibly overrated. There's like nobody in between. But the truth of the matter is there is an in-between ground here, right? He's a very talented quarterback. He is a top 25 to 30 player in this class, regardless of how you kind of want to nitpick some of the traits. But I think that the things that you said are interesting, because not only is he an advanced player from a mental capacity perspective, and that's to be expected, he's also a much different player than what his uncles were, right? Like, he's clearly Cooper's son, because he's a really good athlete, man. He moves incredibly well. That's one of the things that popped out to me. I mean, they're running quarterback run game, quarterback power, zone read stuff. Like, they're letting him move around a little bit. And the biggest thing for me is that everything is it looks easy to him, right? And that's what's interesting, because we talk about the level of competition. Doesn't play the greatest competition out there in New Orleans, but what he does is clean, easy delivery, good athlete, good size. There's just not many holes in his game, right? And he's just been a guy that's been around the game, so you just expect the mental side to already be there. But I don't want us to undersell the fact that, like, this kid is a very talented all-around quarterback from a just skill set wise perspective.
Yeah, and I think that's something like you're hitting the right points there. He might not be athletically on the same level as these other guys, but he might actually be a better athlete than his uncles are. And, at the age of 18, at 6'4", 215 pounds, he's going to continue. It's guaranteed really for all 4 of these quarterbacks that within the first 2 years of being in college football, they're going to put on close to 15 to 20 pounds, right? Of just like muscle mass and just growing, as young men, right? As young men do. But, the biggest thing that I kind of took away from it is that, yeah, he is athletic. He is tough. He runs tough. And, when he's on film, he looks every bit of 6'4" and more, right? He has that presence on film. Whereas some other guys like, yeah, he's 6'2", he's 6'3", but they look small or, a little bit different on film. He looks big and strong in the pocket. What I was really impressed with too is just that, he's a smooth thrower, and you could see that he's really running like an offense that allows him to develop that, thought process as a quarterback, right? Mm-hmm. And that's what we're talking about here, is just him being a great quarterback. And I think he's in an offense that's allowing him to learn that process, how to make decisions quickly, how to get the football out of his hands, and still playing at a level of competition too, where, yeah, maybe he can be, big brother and, lean on a few guys too. But let's get it straight though too, right? Like there's a lot of great football players in New Orleans. He's just not maybe in the upper echelon of leagues as far as depth goes that way.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's really well phrased, Matt. And I would say for me, he is a really just the best thing that I like about his from a throwing perspective, because I think we both coined it the same, right? He's a very smooth, natural thrower.
Absolutely.
I love that he is able to change arm speeds and just kind of layer the football across the field, right? Like I see him throw a touch and anticipation, and he's able to throw because I think that his velocity is good. I wouldn't say that he's like a superb from an arm strength perspective, but he's able to change it so much, a different pace, kind of the level of throw that he is, right? So whether he's hitting the intermediate to deep parts of the field, whether he's throwing to the sideline or hitting some in cuts, whatever it is, he's able to throw with pace, which I love a lot. He has an advanced understanding, I think, of how to throw a touch and to take something off the football.
I totally agree. I think that, just the fact that he is a smooth thrower, it is in rhythm a lot. It doesn't look like it takes a lot of effort for him to make the throw. He throws the ball well down the field. Maybe not as well as some of these other guys, or at least not with power, right? Or like outstanding, like, wow, like he could really let it go. But like I kind of compare him almost to, and like, this isn't a knock. I'm saying this is a positive note because so many people knock it lately. But like, he's kind of like Tua, right? Tua Tagovailoa. He's not like the most powerful Patrick Mahomes thrower, but he throws a really good football. He's in rhythm. He knows where to go with the football. And I think these are things that are like great traits for a young man to have. And, the great thing is too, is that, Sarkisian has had great experience with a lot of talented, versatile football players through college, through the NFL. And I think he's kind of hitting like a perfect spot there to continue to develop his game going forward. And the other thing too, that I don't know if you guys noticed on the film, like I think he throws it extremely well on the run. And that is Sarkisian, like he loves that, half roll setup type of throws, play action, boots and nakeds. And I think that's something that Arch will be able to do very well in the Texas offense.
Yeah, and Joe, I don't know if just kind of going off of what Matt just said, what I really love about his fit in the offense as well is Sark loves levels. Like he loves it. So when you have a guy like this that I think can throw with different trajectories and throw to the intermediate deep parts of the field, you need that type of touch, right? And I think that he's really going to be a great fit in that offense as well.
And Texas right now is going to need some help at that quarterback position because they're already down 2 quarterbacks, and we see the impact that had when they played Alabama this year. Quinn Ewers, who is a fantastic athlete, fantastic player, and we saw some signs of what could come from Quinn. Arch might be able to step in and start as a redshirt freshman as soon as Quinn is out the door, if it's either to the NFL draft, if it's to somewhere else. But there is a lot of juice behind Arch Manning heading to Texas. There was an uproar, if you will, over him making that decision and the excitement behind him joining that program, which is really great to see. Our second guy that we've got on our list, Dante Moore, has provided a lot of excitement for an unexpected program that he chose to join. There was possibilities of him going to Notre Dame. There were debates on if he was going to pick Michigan or not. Instead, he is going to be playing for Oregon after his 2023 high school season is completed. So as I said, ranked number 2 per 247 Sports at Martin Luther King High School in Detroit, Michigan, 6'2.5", 210 pounds, and going to be playing for the Oregon Ducks. Guys, Dante Moore has been also described as possibly being better than Arch Manning. that if Arch wasn't in this class, or if Arch's last name wasn't Manning, it would be Dante Moore as the number one quarterback in the class. So Ryan, I got to ask this because I know you kind of think this and you share the sentiment. If you were to make that debate and make that alteration, why would you say that Dante's number one?
I mean, because we talked about the mental side of the game for a second, right? And I think Dante Moore is the most advanced quarterback from a mental side that I've seen in this class, man. Like there's an innate understanding of how to throw with anticipation that is just so obvious on film. I think that his arm is good. It's plus. I think that it's in the realm of an Arch Manning. Like I don't think he definitely doesn't have the strongest arm of quarterbacks, a couple other quarterbacks that we're talking about today, but his arm is more than good enough. Very good decision maker, man. Like he just has great eyes, great feel for the game, Joe. Like you can see him even in this offense going from first to second read. Like this isn't just a half field type of offense. Like they ask a lot of Dante Moore. And I think Dante Moore is kind of in the similar vein of a CJ Stroud in the sense that like he's a good athlete, but he just isn't a good athlete to extend the football and to throw as a passer. Like he's not a runner, even though he could be. So from the mental side, from the accuracy perspective, I think Dante Moore is excellent, man. And I don't hide my opinion here that I do think that he is the best quarterback in the 2023 class. And again, I think it comes back to the fact that I think that he's just a very mature and advanced passer with the understanding of how to throw the football and to work through progressions in the passing game.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree. I think one of the things that jumped out at me is just how quickly he can get the football out of his hands when he's set to throw. The other impressive thing about Dante Moore, which I saw a little bit more compared to Arch Manning, was his flexibility in his limber arm allows him to throw from a lot of funny positions on the run and in the pocket. And of course, that's something that obviously is a little bit more popular in today's game, but it is something that does pop on his film more often than not. And I think you're kind of like lowballing him a little bit as far as like his arm strength. I think he can drive the ball down the field pretty well. I think he's, through a lot of the highlights that I saw with him, a lot of powerful throws on the line, 25, 30 yards down the field and looking like it's done with relative ease. It's not like there's this 9-yard hitch up and, rip it. It looks relaxed. It looks simple, and I think that is a credit to the fact that his arm has that natural, just like elastic whip to it. The cool thing too for him is that I think he's running an offense that is, a little similar in style to the college that he's going to. It's very open. It seems like, the offense is kind of focused around him and him making the right decision more often than not. And I think it's something that is very impressive that, he's going to something that for him, at least, like it's not a known entity that's like, hey, we're going to be this great, quarterback place at Oregon, or at least not as of yet.
Yep. But
he is going there and he is going to kind of, at least start a new style, right? A new, mojo to that area, and I think it's cool that he's taking maybe that risk of saying like, yeah, I'm going to go out there. I'm going to try to do this and, kind of be at the forefront of Oregon taking back over, this whole Pac-12.
Matt, for me, he is the perfect modern college spread quarterback. Like like you said it, from throwing from different arm angles and changing his platform and doing all that type of stuff. Very natural thrower, and he's just kind of that whip out there, man. Like he can get the ball out quick, whether it's in the screen game, the RPO game. Like he is that quick decision maker, right? So I think that's a tremendous fit with this offense. I mean, if they're running anything similar to what they were, I know Dillingham is the offensive coordinator, but even some elements of what Stetson Bennett's been able to do with Georgia over the last couple of years, like that is the perfect fit for him because he's just such a quick, accurate quarterback and a decisive decision maker at the quarterback position.
Absolutely. And I think one of the plays that really stood out to me was he was running to his left. And I mean, running pretty hard to his left. So like he was getting up a little bit and he just threw a laser beam from 35 yards out to the front pylon for a touchdown. And, those are plays that really jump out. And I think that's why there are some people out there that when they see those plays, they're like, hey, this guy has to be, one of the top QBs. So because he just makes some of those look so easy and, just throwing in tight windows, throwing it aggressively. I think he does play in a league that is, pretty tough. There does look like there's a lot of good football players on the field. And, I was really impressed. I was really impressed with just his able to get his feet set and throw it really quickly too. And, everybody says footwork, but it's just like, what do you mean by that? And I think he's able to move, set, plant his feet, and then create a lot of torque and power in a very quick time frame. And I think that's one of the things too that really jumped off the screen to me.
And I think there's sometimes where too, Matt, where like some guys will get their base, would get their feet and their base kind of disconnected from their upper body a little bit, right? Where they just tarnished their accuracy, man. And for me, Dante Moore is always connected. Even when he's throwing off platform from different arm angles, he's still able to maintain that accuracy because he's just got such quick feet and keeps his base under him at all times, right? So again, I think that's where that quick decision maker comes in because his base is just always solid to me. He's always in rhythm.
And this is where I'm going to give you like a little Sims complete QB, knowledge.
It.
So what we do, right, and what we coach, right, and I'll coach both of you on how to throw it better too at one point, right, is it doesn't really matter if his feet are perfectly set, but what he does do is that he does, manipulate his upper body to allow him to stay tall and to rotate around the throw a lot. And if you can learn to separate your lower body from your upper body, like you see Pat Mahomes and Aaron Rodgers and Justin Herbert do a lot, those are the things that you're just like, you see it, you're like, oh, wow, that's super easy. Wow, this guy's talented, but you just don't know how difficult that is for, the common man, to make those throws. And that's why, he is an exciting football player that way, because I do think he has that ability at such a young age.
Always love getting the coaching points. And Matt, just wait till we get the specialists, man. We're going to get into the weeds of long snapping, and it is going to be the best episode of the.
Hey, I long snapped in high school, man. I was the backup long snapper. Really? Yeah, I mean, I didn't want to do it, but they put me out there anyway for the second team just in case.
I also had to be a long snapper in high school, Joe, so I feel the pain for Matt on this one.
Yeah. But just to wrap up on Dante Moore, it's really funny as you were talking about, Ryan, what Dillingham looks for in his offensive play calling and his quarterbacks. They have Bo Nix now, I feel like, is the complete opposite of what they need. And they're getting Dante Moore, who actually brings that improviser style, that ability to hit those tight windows and move on the run and actually do it consistently and accurately, unlike Bo, who tends to run in circles a little bit. And that's a separate issue for another day because we're talking about high school guys. The number 3 quarterback in the 2023 class, Nico Iamaleava, number 3 per 247 Sports. He's from Downey, California. Big dude, 6'5", 195, committed to Tennessee. Notoriously has that big NIL contract that was offered to him. Guys, did you guys know this, that Nico is actually also a very high-prized volleyball recruit, which is very funny to see. And that really speaks to his athleticism. The guy can move. The guy moves really well in space. And I've noticed a lot of the reports that have been written on him, and also when you watch the tape, that this is a guy that moves outside of the pocket and throws on the run very, very well.
Springy and explosive are the 2 words that come to mind when I think about Nico, man. We talked about, Joe, like Arch, having good arm strength, maybe Dante having good to plus good arm strength. Nico has the best arm of anybody on this list. Like, he has an absolute cannon for an arm, and everything just seems like whether it is springy in the pocket, springy outside of structure, throwing the football and getting it out, everything is just so explosive for Nico. And that explosiveness also leads to some volatility, in my opinion, at times, right? Like, there's some times where I'm thinking that he's overstriding a little bit, Matt, and I think that his accuracy is affected in that regard. But when you're talking from just a very pure talent perspective, arm strength, athleticism, it's hard to find someone better than Nico, man. He is a special player from a physical standpoint.
Yeah, it's funny. I think you're hitting the exact same points that I kind of noticed right from the beginning, was that he's sudden and he's very quick twitched. Of an athlete and as a thrower. And, he is another guy that, like, he looks 6'5" on the field. He actually looks like he's 6'8", compared to the competition that he's playing against. But it is one of those things where he's 6'5", he has a good frame. He's a little slender, right? He's not like a super broad shoulder type of guy. So I don't know like how much bigger he's going to get at the next level. But, nonetheless, He is a flexible and limber arm as well, like we said with Dante Moore. And, when I watch him play, I see a guy that is totally comfortable, at the position. He's very relaxed back there. And, one thing that I would say that I would say he needs to get a little bit better at is just like when the guy is open, throw it. And I think occasionally, because he's, so much better of a player and an athlete than some of his competition is, that he kind of gets away with, skipping the first read or skipping his open guy and kind of rolling out and throwing and making plays that way. That's something that going forward, he'll have to learn to just keep it simple and allow big plays to come to him. But yeah, super impressed with this guy. Can really drive the football down the field with power. And I actually, have to agree with you on your evaluation of him leaning forward just slightly when he goes to throw. But sometimes those things happen when you're such a tall dude and you're not quite used to, staying tall. Like basically really what he needs to do is he needs to be a little bit more evenly distributed, like with his feet, and be almost slightly leaning like on his back foot a little bit more, like you see like Aaron Rodgers and Josh Allen and those guys do it when they're really trying to drive the football down the field. But yeah, I was super impressed with this guy. He really jumps off the tape. And he's actually a tough runner too, which I didn't expect to see from what, all the reports say. I thought that he ran very, very tough for a guy that has such a big frame that way.
Joe, it's funny. I feel like sometimes guys' biggest strengths and biggest weaknesses are the same thing, right? And for Nico, it's the same. I mean, he can make any throw on the field, and he throws with incredible power. But that is his weakness sometimes. To Matt's point, he doesn't take the easy thing, right? He was going to hold the football a little longer. He's going to take the second read, push the ball down the field because he can. And sometimes it's going to hurt him. Sometimes he's going to make a tremendous play. So I think there's just a little bit more of and I would rather have a quarterback that way that I can reel back than trying to make a guy push the ball, to the opposite way. That usually doesn't work out too well. So I'm glad that he's a little bit of a free thrower, because I can kind of reel that back. Incredible tools. Just, it's now about harnessing the risk versus reward of Nico's arm, because he can put the football pretty much wherever he wants on the football field.
Those are good problems to have. They really are. Like,
yes, they are.
It's a good problem to have. And it's one of those where, all right, hey, Nico, why are you not throwing it? Oh, that was a great play. All right, good job. So it'll be something that a lot of players and coaches, obviously, maybe at times get frustrated with early on in the process for him while he's learning to play at that next level. But there is definitely a lot of wow factor with him and his ability. And, really for all these guys, I think there's still a lot more room for growth as throwers, physically. And maybe Nico more so than everybody else, just because of his build, his long arms, right? He's going to be able to kind of sling the football around a little bit more freely. But I think with his situation, Tennessee is a great fit. When I watch Tennessee, I see an offense that fits Nico extremely well. And I think it's got a lot of good talent, there. I think they know what they're doing offensively to create points, to create explosive plays. And I think it's really good for a quarterback to go in there and compete at a high level in the SEC. And it's exciting times for Tennessee because, listen, when I was at Tennessee, we were, in the weeds trying to get stuff going. And it looks like this coaching staff has really figured it out finally after 20 years of headaches. And it's a good time, I think, for Nico to go there and to carve his own path in the history of being in Tennessee Vol.
And you
Fellas,
see
this is sorry, Joe. I was just going to say,
you're good.
This is by far my favorite fit. If I'm talking about from a player to a scheme to a program right now, I like what Josh Heupel is doing in Tennessee. I think that when you saw what he was able to do with Hendon Hooker in his first year last year, I think it's similarly how I want to see Nico use. Hendon is a guy that can really push the ball vertically, can use his athleticism, and I see the same thing with Nico. So I absolutely love the fit with Tennessee. I think it is a really, really solid fit for him.
Yeah, as Ryan loves to do on the other show too. You stole my point. I was going to say that Hendon Hooker has looked so freaking good since he took over under Heupel. And like you're both talking about here, you take a really good athlete and then you're replacing him soon with an even better athlete. Nico is as we've discussed fully here, the best athlete possibly of the bunch of the 4 players that we're evaluating amongst these quarterback prospects. You throw him into an offense that allows him to capitalize on that. And I think that this Tennessee program, for some reason, is always undervalued, is overlooked. Everyone always wants to take a look at the Texas A&Ms or the, obviously Georgia and Alabama sitting.
Well, it's really been the facts though too. Like they've been overlooked because they've been underperforming. Yeah.
But they are a sneaky team where Heupel is getting this team ready, and they've looked really good in the first 2 weeks of this season. And now you're recruiting at a level where you've got a top 3 quarterback in the class. I think Tennessee is going to be sneaky good in a couple of years. If we're actually properly evaluating stock on these programs, I'm taking Tennessee over Texas A&M. Like, I'm excited that this is who they're going for. This
I like
is
that
quarterback
take
that they want. And it shouldn't be a hot take. I'm sure Texas A&M fans are going to hate that. But this is a perfect fit, as you guys said, with Nico going to Tennessee.
When you watched Tennessee versus Pitt the other day, it was one of those games where I was like, Tennessee's going to go back and watch the film, and they're going to be like, we should have beat this team by 21 points. Mm-hmm. Like, that's how much more talented they looked on the field, and just how much more of like a little bit more of a well-oiled machine they were. And they let Pitt kind of hang around by just, typical like college mental errors and mistakes. But I totally agree. I think Tennessee is like a dangerous team. And the thing is too, we have to keep in mind with Tennessee is, and this was something that was noticeable even when I was on the team. Geographically, since it's such a long state, right? You're actually recruiting areas like Georgia, North Carolina, South Carolina, more often than you are that are kids in Memphis. And I think that you'll see too that, with them getting a kid all the way from California, Tennessee does have that, allure to get players like Notre Dame from all across the country.
Yep.
And that's something that they're going to continue to tap into. And this is a great start with Nico being one of them, coming all the way. Because, hey, there's a lot of schools from where he is in California to Tennessee. There's probably like 2,000 colleges between the two. And he went all the way across the country. So, proves to them that they're out there, they're finding good talent. And I think that's just going to continue to go right with the attraction of bringing in a Nico.
So moving on to our last guy. We've got Malachi Nelson, who is committed to play for USC, not too far down the road from me. Los Alamitos High School here in California, 6'3", 182, the leanest of the group that we've discussed so far. The one note that I've seen, and I'm really curious your take on this, Matt, has been described as possibly the most natural thrower of the group. Do you agree with that sentiment that Nelson might be the more natural guy, despite maybe not being as big of an athlete or as electric as an athlete as the other players we've talked about?
Yeah, I mean, he definitely is a talented thrower. I mean, my first 2 notes that I made on was just smooth thrower, strong arm, can throw, strong from his back foot, like we were talking about, where Nico maybe needs to improve slightly, right? I do think that he is a very good thrower. I think all of them are actually pretty natural throwers. I think that he definitely has a lot of upside. I will say for him being 6'3", 182, he does look a little on the smaller side when I do watch him on film. But that's like the exact size and weight that I was when I was in high school. And fast forward 3 years later, and I was 6'3", 220. So it's like it could change very quickly for him. But really relaxed in the pocket. And I think, again, too, just has really good pocket awareness. I was really impressed by actually all 4 of these guys with their pocket awareness. And I think that's a credit, too, to their schools and their programs where, they're just letting them play and letting them drop back and just, play with a little bit more freedom than maybe some other quarterbacks have to deal with in high school. But he definitely has a good feel for the game. And I think he has tremendous upside. For him as well.
That was the first note I made as well, was that I wrote down he was a cool customer in the pocket, man. Like, it doesn't look like unflappable, right? Like he's just really calm, working against chaos, working against pressure. And I think he's the best deep ball thrower of the 4 guys that we're talking about, man. Like there's just a natural type of ability to take something off and to push vertically. Like he doesn't quite have the pace from an arm strength perspective as Nico does, but he's a more natural deep ball thrower and just kind of throws with that touch down the field, which I love a ton. He's got kind of a little bit of longer arms, right, Matt? So like it's a little bit like a long release at times, but like when he gets out, man, it's kind of a snap and quick delivery, right? So the process might be a little slow to the actual release point, but the kid snaps the football off his hand and he gets out with pace.
Well, and anytime that you're throwing the football down the field, right, anything that's more than 25 or 30 yards, it's going to take longer for you to throw it because you have to build up more pressure, right, more tension to actually deliver a pass with that amount of power and pace and velocity, right? And with him, I think he really actually understands how to leverage a throw down the field. Right. Whereas I say Nico like has a huge upside when he really learns how to leverage it. You got to think about it just like the great celebration, right, for a touchdown throw. Everyone does the bow and arrow, right? Mm-hmm. And I teach my QBs this all the time. You know, the archer back in the day in medieval warfare, you know, he didn't do this and stay level and shoot it across the battlefield. No, he tilted his shoulders up and stayed level, and then he launched that thing across the battlefield. And I think this is something that Nelson really understands. He understands how to leverage and get his body in position to drive the football up and down the field. And that's why you see so many great bomb throws on his highlight.
And another good thrower on the run too, man. Like he can break the pocket and he can really throw on the run. And it's a thing that there's kind of a natural feel to it, right? Like there's definitely, obviously, you know, you improve on the fact of, you know, keeping your base and keeping everything, get that hip torque and all that stuff working outside of pressure. But like, there's just a natural feel to Malachi Nelson as a thrower. Like he just seems like he was born to throw football, which is not a typical thing, but he's just got that natural feel to him that I think is hard to teach sometimes for a lot of guys.
Yeah, absolutely. He's definitely the one that I would say that, you know, probably, you know, if he were to, let me say, if he were to work with me, for example, there would be just very few things that I would fine tune about him, right? There wouldn't be like, oh, let's go back to ground zero of the drawing board and start all over again. There would just be like, hey, just change this and this. And I'm telling you, you're going to throw it better and harder than you ever have in your life. You know, but the cool thing is that it fits in the offense again, right? He's going to a really good matchup again with his school. This being in California, even more exciting for him. He's in his home turf, in his home territory, but I think the offense fits him extremely well. I think he's going to go there. He's going to learn from a really good quarterback and a coach that really understands how to get the most out of their quarterbacks. And, you know, one of the things too that like I think is, you know, really prevalent for all the young quarterbacks that are watching this, right? And just, you know, trying to be the next four guys on this list. All four of these guys throw it well on the run. And if you want to be a high level recruit one day, right, you need to throw it well on the run as well. It has to be. It's one of those things where, you know, it's part of the game now. If you can't throw it well on the run, you're putting yourself at an extreme disadvantage. Because listen, coaches aren't always going to get you in a great opportunity to succeed. They're just not, you know, they're humans too. They're going to make mistakes. But if you can bail your team out by being active in the pocket, getting out of the pocket, and still being a dangerous threat down the field to complete the football, you know, that is something that to me is just, you know, it's going to jump off the screen to a lot of coaches. Hey, look at this. This is a bad play by this high school coach. Look at this guy get out of the pocket, 40-yard touchdown on the run. You know, those are the things, as the cliche is, you just can't coach those. And at the next level, this is where everybody makes the mistake. You know, college coaches and pro coaches, they don't have the time to sit there and teach you how to throw it better. Right. So they kind of need the finished product and then just being able to fine tune you and to say, this is how we want you to run the offense. This is how we want you to run our scramble drill. And if you could do it better than the other guys, you're going to play. And it's just that simple.
So I think that's a really good note to wrap us up on. We've done our fantastic deep dive on the four big quarterbacks in this class. We've got our next position breakdown. We're going to talk about four talented running backs on our next episode. Folks, for me, Matthew Simms, Ryan Roberts, thank you for tuning in. We'll be back with more high school recruit analysis.